Hey everybody, welcome back to the channel. A very exciting bottle to dive into today. My community was very generous and they sent me a wonderful Christmas/birthday gift because those two things kind of collide for me. I opened this thing on a video posted on Twitter, but my community was so generous. This is the Whistlepig 18yr Double Malt. It says patiently mellowed for 18 years. And this was an exciting one for me because I've always been a fan of Whistlepig. Obviously, if you're not familiar with Whistlepig, so distillery in Vermont, what they used to do was sourcing a lot of their whiskey from Canada. And it was great stuff. Obviously, they picked excellent whiskeys and were known for that. But they also started raising their own rye. And so a lot of their whiskeys these days actually incorporate some of the stuff that's grown right there at the distillery. But this one here, this is an 18yr. So this is all from, not from their farm, this is all from Canada. Now I should mention, this is a $400 bottle. Well, it depends on where you get it, obviously, but usual price right now for the third edition is $400. This is not a cheap bottle of whiskey. So this is sourced from Alberta Distillery up in Canada. And the interesting thing about the mash bill on this one is that it's mostly rye, but it does have a small percentage of malted rye as well. So you've got 79% rye, 15% malted rye, and then 6% malted barley. Now, malted barley is often used because of its enzymatic power, right? The enzymes in barley are so powerful, they'll convert all the starches of the whole mash. Even if you just throw in 5% of your mash is barley, it has enough enzymatic power to convert everything. But you definitely get other flavor profiles as well when you malt some of the other grains in the mash, and in this case, the rye. And a good portion of it, by the way, has been malted for some of that extra enzymatic power. Which is kind of funny from this coming out of Canada, because Canada actually have some of the most innovative ways of having enzymatic boosting power from external sources. They sort of mastered the art of giving a mash extra enzymatic power without using barley. Now, obviously the Scots, they can't do that. They're not allowed to do that per their rules, but Canadians can. But this one, it doesn't need it. It's got 6% of this is malted barley and another 15% malted rye. So this thing was blasted with enzymatic power right there in the mash. So it didn't need any supplements, enzyme supplements whatsoever. I am very excited to dive into this, give you some tasting notes. I did have a small sip I shared with a buddy of mine because my community paid for it. A friend of mine who doesn't live in the same state as me, he's 2 states away, went to a store to pick up this bottle for me, and then he drove it all the way up to my house and spent the weekend with me. We had a great time, but I figured I owed him a sip for doing that. So I haven't even had a full pour. We literally just had a splash. I mean, you can see there's barely anything taken out of the neck of this thing. Now the stopper on this is actually hand pressed by a glass blower there near the distillery in Vermont. Now, very cool, has a lot of character to it. And they actually have a video on YouTube, Whistlepig does, of these being made. It's like a 2-minute video, but it's just kind of cool to highlight the process of having these hand-pressed glass stoppers. Kind of a cool keepsake to have. So with no further ado, let's dive right into this thing, yeah? You love that sound, don't you? So if you're ever wondering how much you should pour, the general rule is to pour up to the widest part of the bulb of your Glencairn. So the color on it is just light and golden. Having spent 18 years in a barrel, it doesn't have a lot of darkness to it. It's not like it was sitting in a heavily charred barrel in Kentucky for 18 years. This is a totally different landscape. Wow, that nose is so unique. What a trip. There's a lot going on there. You get that those chemical smells, almost like you would get with nail polish or rubbing alcohol. Very common, but not in a bad way. And it's not overly strong or potent either. But then underneath that, it's very floral, quite floral on the nose with a sweet sort of nectar vibe to it. I'm gonna say honeysuckle. It reminds me of honeysuckle. We had these big honeysuckle bushes in my front lawn growing up right outside the front of our house, my childhood home. I'd go out there, I'd play outside all the time, and I'd just pluck those honeysuckles off and lick the nectar off the tip of those. And this reminds me of those. This takes me home to my childhood in that regard. But also get like a apricot off of this as well, and sort of like a bubblegum smell too. Let's go in on it. Oh man. What a unique trip that is, huh? You get that rye peppercorn, a little bit of citrus, a little bit of that like dusty leather vibe. But I also definitely get those dried fruits. That bubblegum sort of comes through on the palate as well. And maybe even a little bit of black licorice. But it's not overly hot for being 18 years. It's proofed down a little bit. This is 92 proof, so 46% ABV, 92 proof. So this isn't like cask strength coming out that barrel. So I've toned that down a little bit. Not too much. The low 90s really is, to me, it's like the sweet spot for anything that isn't a, barrel proof, cask strength, whatever. I like those low 90s. But it definitely has that typical rye spice going on, but it doesn't like punch you in the face. It kind of dials that back. Like it says, it's been mellowed out. And you definitely can sense that for sure. I spent a lot of time in that barrel. So you got to imagine, this thing was going into the barrel before I could legally drink. It's 18-year-old in the barrel, but it's the 3rd edition, so it's got a couple of years on it on the shelf. Call it 20 years. I'm 35 now, so you're looking at this being put in the barrel when I was 15 years old. That's kind of crazy to think about. This went into the barrel when I was 15. It comes out when I'm 35, or it comes into my hands when I'm 35. I'm the first person to drink out of this bottle. That's crazy. Me and this whiskey have both been through a lot of things in those 20 years. Tell you what a delicious rye whiskey though. I'm so grateful they sent this to me. What a cool experience. Because it's not every day you go out there and buy yourself a $400 bottle of whiskey. This is something that's going to be sitting on my shelf for a long time. Something special I'll break out once or twice a year to share. And a reminder, if you have an expensive bottle that you're nursing over time, when it gets low, like under 50% full, you're probably going to want to decant it into a smaller vessel so there's less oxygen in the bottle, because oxygen is an enemy of whiskey quality. So over time, as it gets lower, once you get under 50%, decant it into a separate vessel. It'll last longer. You get a little bit of that subtle spice on the finish and almost like an earthy sort of quality, but it doesn't end hot, and it just kind of slowly tapers off. That sort of bubblegum vibe is always kind of there. What a cool whiskey. Thank you so much for sharing this with me, everybody. If you were one of the people that pitched in to buy this bottle, I really appreciate it. It's very kind to you. Actually, some other bottles on the way. People were very generous. I've got a new Riff barrel pick coming from courtesy of Matt Warren and his club. I'll be sure to give them a shout out when we cover that bottle for sure. I've got that on the way. I know that we've got Brian LaRue, very generous, sending me a bottle as well. Plus, I got some new stuff on my shelf from Christmas. And a bunch of gift cards came in for Total Wine, so I'm headed there tomorrow and see what we can find with what I was given as well. So should be a fun couple of weeks coming up on the channel. So I'm really looking forward to diving into some new stuff, and hopefully you'll be there with me. Thank you so much for tuning in. Cheers. May you live richly and get better with age. Catch you in the next video. Bye-bye.